Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Or, of course, if you're watching on our growing YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And, Andrew, we're here for a little bye-week podcast with the Tar Heels obviously off this coming weekend before heading to South Bend. The following weekend, going to kind of hit on where the team's at right now, what they're doing during the bye week. We'll hit on a transfer as well that happened on Monday and kind of look ahead to after the bye week for the Tar Heels. But before we do that, make sure you guys head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com. It's a great time to sign up for our premium membership, just $8.33 a month, right in front of basketball season. There's a ton of recruiting stuff that goes on 365 days a year as well. So if you want to see more content, as most of our content is not free, head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com and sign up for just $8.33 a month. You can find that link in the description below. But AJ, first thing I kind of want to hit on, obviously Carolina coming off a big win over Miami, 4-3 overall, 3-3 in the ACC ahead of their bye week. What are your kind of overall thoughts on where the team is right now and kind of the progress that they've made through 7 games?
I started to chuckle, and I probably should have saved it for when you said progress, because I don't really know what kind of progress they've made. And I'm not being overly critical. I'm not trying to be funny. But this has been a strange season. I've covered some strange seasons in the past in both sports, in all sports really. But Carolina football this year, I would say 7 games in, has played below expectations as much as any team I've covered. I think Phillip Rivers' last team at NC State, this is sort of a comparable type season. And they weren't able to capitalize on him being there and how prolific he was. And I think right now North Carolina is not really capitalizing a whole lot on Sam Howell. In fact, I think they've made things more difficult for Sam Howell through 7 games. Are these issues that they have fixable? Are they fixable long-term? Of course. Clearly things they can address in the spring and next summer, next fall, and fix. Are they fixable in the off week as they launch into the last 5 and have to go to South Bend? I don't know. I think that's a question that if somebody says yes, they're probably hoping more than they are thinking, because we've been given no indication that a lot of things are headed in the right direction on the field with this team. Now, there are a lot of things headed in the right direction in the program. So I have to distinguish the difference between those two things. How this team performs, to me, is not indicative of where the program is. I think in a weird kind of way, that when the season ends and Mac has a chance to look back and sort of comb over everything, he's going to learn a lot more about where the program is, about where the brush fires are that you need to put out, and where the really healthy areas are that need to flourish and continue to water and sprout and all that kind of stuff. And I think they'll be better for having gone through this experience. Now, I'm not going to say this is entirely part of the process like I have before when they've had their hiccup games and that kind of thing. However, if you're talking about getting the program to a very strong place in year 5, which is part of this mission, then maybe a giant step backwards on the field this year is ultimately a part of the progress, because they're going to realize certain things just may not work at the ACC level or at the Power 5 level, whether it's schematically or otherwise. If that's indeed the case, Mac will figure it out, and this year will be a wonderful year of things learned in his reentry back into college football as a coach. And if he's standing on a podium somewhere as a champion in the 5th year or the 6th year, I can see him referencing the value of year 3 and all that was learned, and how he made some tweaks in the program and fixed things for the better, and they chugged along a lot quicker afterward, having gone through that. Some people might say, boy, man, you're making a giant excuse for what's going on in the field. Well, I'm really not, because I think that they've been bad. And I don't know if they're a better team right now on the field than they were when they went to Blacksburg. So that's not an excuse. That's certainly not applauded. That's criticism. However, I do think a lot of stuff's going to be learned, has been learned, and will continue to be learned in the next 6 weeks. They got 5 games left. So they have that intel going into the offseason.
Did you see anything off the top of your head against Miami that maybe showed you that this coaching staff or this team is trying something new or learning from some of their past mistakes? Was there anything in particular that stood out on Saturday that kind of led you to believe that?
I don't see the game like Mac would.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of experience around the game. I've seen a lot of stuff. I think I understand it pretty well, but I don't understand it like they do. So there might be things that I saw that look different that might not be the difference that I think it is. So my point is that they kind of know who they are, and they know what they want to be, and they're married to the systems that they have. They're married to the schematic approaches that they have. Mm-hmm. And I'm only saying this because I'm directly answering your question. And to be honest with you, Jacob, and we didn't rehearse this ahead of time. No. That's something a lot of people have asked over the last few days. And because they want to see certain schematic changes, which is, I think, where you're getting here.
Yeah.
When you play run the air raid offense, you just can't up and make schematic changes in the middle of the season. You could tweak some things. You could pull back in some areas, maybe thrust forward in some areas. But defensively, with Jay Bateman's defense, what do you do? I asked Mac last week about some of the issues, and one of the things I suggested is, do you simplify? And he said, well, Andrew, I don't know how much simpler we can get this thing. Mm-hmm. So you don't know how much simpler you can get Jay Bateman's scheme, or how much simpler you can get in general? I think that question may be answered at some point in time. We don't really know for sure. I don't think that there was a big difference in approach in the Miami game as in previous games. It's just certain things worked a little bit more. Their running between the tackles is something I've been highly critical of this year, has been better the last 2 weeks. And the conventional stuff, it's not just Sam taking off. They've opened up holes for Chandler, for DJ Jones, and some of the design runs for Sam. Some of the RPOs where he takes it and goes between the tackles has been there the last 2 weeks, far more than it had been previously. It had been intermittent previously. It's been pretty consistent the last 2 weeks, save for a stretch in the second half against Miami. Defensively, I mean, they were really, really good in the first half against Miami, except for some awful penalties that actually gave Miami life. The penalties gave them life, and the pick six did. But defensively in the second half, they looked like a different club. It didn't look like the scheme change. They were just getting beat, and they looked like they were confused at times again. Mac mentioned a touchdown in the Florida State game that he had never seen in his life before in 47 years of football, 47 years, I guess it is, of football. And I went back and looked at each touchdown over and over and over again. And the conclusion I came to is it must have been the fifth touchdown, the short pass in the end zone. The receiver was wide open. It was a receiver who went in motion, who crossed behind the quarterback, Travis, and just ran a little route. It was wide open, nobody anywhere near him. The two wide receivers on the far right basically set picks, but they picked 4 Tar Heels.
Yeah, I remember that.
I've never seen that before. And there was no communication because you could see when the receiver was in motion, there were no eyes. There's no face mask moving. Didn't look like there was any communication going on. As soon as the play ended, Gemmell looked back at a veteran safety and just like, what the heck?
I know exactly.
So I'm guessing that's the play. I don't know for sure. I've not asked anybody in the program. I don't think it's that important right now because I do think that the communication issues don't begin and end there. They have been pretty consistent because they have told us the communication issues on defense have been consistent. Max said they didn't have it against Duke, and while Duke's been the one really good defensive performance they've had since the Georgia State game. So they've had ugly eruptions defensively in 4 of the last 5 games, and it's been against pedestrian offenses. And I think that's got to be the biggest concern, more than the sacks, more than some of the issues running the ball conventionally. I think the communication on defense and the eruptions allowed and the inability for anybody other than Josh Downs to get open, I think those are issues that are pretty alarming. And I know that they're trying to fix, but you can work your tail off during the week trying to fix it. Doesn't mean it's going to get fixed.
No, definitely not. Yeah. I thought you saw a couple, just personnel-wise, I know you hit on that, but I know you saw Justin Olsen get the start ahead of Emory Simmons.
Yeah.
Emory did play a little bit later on in the game, but it didn't play nearly as much as he had been this season. I know defensively, I don't know for a fact, I'd have to go back and look, but I know that one play where in the second half where the Miami player just completely juked Kyler McMichael. It looked like Kyler McMichael was barely even going after him. I think Dre Bly got on him pretty hard after that Don Chapman came in and replaced him. You might know, I don't remember Kyler playing another snap after that. He might have
Chapman played a lot, and he actually graded out pretty well.
Yeah, I thought he looked good as well.
PBUs, I think. I mean, Chapman's a guy that's played well at safety. They moved him to nickel. I mean, they're look, when you look at what they thought was going to be their defensive alignment in late August and look at it now, they're moving a lot of guys around.
Oh, yeah.
That tells me that guys aren't getting the job done. Or that there's something wrong with the scheme, or maybe they misevaluated in August. Because when you think about it, 3 guys that started the last 4 games on defense, last 3 games, Kelly, Rucker, and Cedric Gray combined for 6 defensive snaps in Blacksburg.
Yep.
So there's a lot of change going on. So when people say, why don't they fix anything? Why don't they do it? Well, they are. They're trying stuff. They've moved Conley all over the place. DeAndre Boykin's got some time at nickel Saturday for the first time, a true freshman. I think he played a mop-up duty against Georgia State. So they are trying stuff. You've got to look closely. If you look at the snap counts and some of the rotations and stuff like that, they're not doing the same thing right now that they did in Blacksburg or that struggled against Virginia, whatever. They are trying stuff. Max said that they were in more press coverage against Duke than they had been. Jay Bateman said that they're in press coverage a lot. Sometimes it looks like they're not at all. And so sometimes it looks like they are. I think that they're comfortable with the calls, as Bateman said last week, and they're comfortable with when they make certain calls, but they're not comfortable with the execution because it begins with bad communication. If you communicate poorly, you're not going to execute very well. A lot of people will say, well, gee, Jeremiah Gemmel hasn't played that well this year. Well, I think Gemmel spent a lot of time in pre-snap getting guys organized.
Yeah, I agree.
A year ago, I don't recall seeing him spend that kind of time in pre-snap getting guys organized. So when he's doing that and the ball is snapped, and sometimes his back has been to the ball, or he's not 100% ready, or he's worried about what this guy and that guy are doing, or what they're saying, or maybe the communication's bad. Maybe they're in the right position, but the communication's off. He's trying to straighten out communication, and then the ball's snapped. Then you got to play football. It's tough. And that's the kind of thing that for Jeremiah to not have to do that, the other guys have to communicate properly and have to be in the right spots. They're working to fix it. There's no doubt. I mean, it's right in front of us. But the scheme is what the scheme is on both sides of the ball. The terminology is what the terminology is. I don't know. Max said they can't really simplify it that much more. At some point, guys got to play.
Yeah, you got to make plays.
Guys have to communicate. Guys have to be in the right place. Guys have to wrap them up and bring them to the ground. They got to make plays. People love to dump on coaches when things are going poorly. And I'm not saying that there aren't issues, and I'm not saying that there are, but players have to make plays ultimately.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree. I'm glad you said that, because I see that a lot in sports. When things go wrong, the coaches are the first ones to get criticized, which is, a lot of times it is accurate to criticize the coaches as well. But at the end of the day, when certain mistakes are being made out in the field, a lot of it, not a lot of it, I should say, but some of it is not down to coaching. It's down to guys not communicating right, not doing what they're supposed to do. So, there is a little bit of a 50-50 mix in there. It's not just the coaches or just the players. I think there's a little give and take in both, right?
And going by Mac Brown's own words, and if he was in this chair and back in his ESPN gig, he would say, and he said it as the head coach of the program and head coach of the assistant coaches, he said, look, if a guy's not doing something right, it's your job to get him to do it right. Yeah. If a guy's not lined up right, it's your job to get him lined up right. So there should be accountability for the coaches. There's no doubt about it. Look, when we put something out on our site and you write it, or Noah writes it, or Dina writes it, and there's a big mistake in there, I'm the publisher of the site. Ultimately, it's my responsibility. I can pull you in the back and make you run sprints. In our site, it'd be like 10-yard sprints, because you could probably run 15-yard sprints, but I can make you all run sprints until you throw up and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, it's my responsibility. So Mac is highly accountable. He was very accountable last Monday when we had him after they lost to Florida State. But the players have to perform.
Yeah. I
mean, if you're a coach and your livelihood is you depend on 20-year-olds doing their jobs all the time, it's got to be a pretty stressful life. Fortunately for them, they're pretty well compensated for it. So I think the trade-off isn't too bad.
No, definitely not. Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that, though, because like you said, you do say it a lot in sports with, it either is hard one way or hard the other. And I think it's always a little bit somewhere in the middle, if you know what I mean. So,
yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move it ahead a little bit. for the people who don't know, from obviously talking to Mac and the coaches over the last couple of weeks and after the Miami game in particular, what is Carolina doing this week for their bye week? Can you give people a little insight to kind of what that looks like?
I know a little bit about what they're doing. The thing that Mac emphasized a couple of times here in the last month or so, including last week, the last time we had him before the Miami game, was that they were going to talk with each kid in the program and try to get an idea what their plans are. They did this before fall camp started, and they're doing it again now. Now they're 7 games in, and maybe a couple of guys that thought they were going to play a little bit more and haven't and might not get on the field much. They want to know if they plan on hitting the transfer portal. They want to know if some pro guys with pro potential, like a Josh Azuto, are you going to enter the draft or are you going to stay in school? They've got to start playing their roster, in part because they have to start focusing on potential transfer portal guys. Mm-hmm. That's a whole new element that they have to deal with. Plus the current class of 22, which has 14 kids, and we believe that they will go up to 18, 19, perhaps, for the right kids that they would bring in. You got to have the space available. Roster management's going to be a little difficult because they had 90 this year because the NCAA allowed the super seniors to not count against the 85, but they have to be back to 85 next year. So they're working on roster management now for after the season is over and they start gearing towards spring practice and ultimately next season. So that's a big part of it. Those conversations are probably the most important thing that's taking place. Plus some of the veterans, some of the guys who play a lot are scaling back. Sam probably resting a lot. And I guess Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they'll get a lot of fundamental work. This is a time for the young guys to get a lot of reps. The players that have been third and fourth string, wide receivers like a J.J. Jones and a Gavin Blackwell, get them a lot of reps. Let's get Criswell and May a ton of reps this week. Let's get Caden Baker a lot of reps for a few days at center, that kind of thing. So this is an opportunity for those guys to maybe re-audition a little bit, show how much they've grown. And when you come out of it, you got 5 games left. There might be a few tweaks in personnel in the rotations. And then maybe some of these guys are at this point, if you're a freshman and you haven't played, they might be waiting till you get through the 8th game. So you play the last 4, not count against you as far as your year of eligibility. So that's for the most part what they're doing. I think the intel they get in each one of those meetings is the most important thing. And they've already learned something with Joffrey Brown entering the transfer portal.
Yeah, obviously, like you said, Joffrey, one of the other things we wanted to hit on with Joffrey Brown announcing on Monday that he is entering the transfer portal. Just to hit on that real quickly, I know he's played this year. Let's not get it twisted. He's been on the field a good amount of times, and I know drops have kind of been a consistent theme of his this year in particular. Were you at all surprised to see a guy like him enter the transfer portal? I know he's obviously brothers De'Ami Brown, so has big connections in North Carolina, but did that surprise you at all, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, when I found out that it was
I know
happening.
You broke it as well, so shout out to you for doing that. Not to pat you on the back or anything.
We may have been the first one to tweet it, but in fairness, a couple of us found out from the same source, from connect you close to the program, that it was happening. I may have just got my tweet out sooner.
Quickest, man. Good stuff on that.
Yeah, so we didn't technically break it. I don't want to take credit for something that we don't earn, but. To answer your question, it surprised me because he's so talented. And in fact, the people that know them, that know the Browns very closely, have all said for a couple of years, Joffrey's more talented than De'Ami. He's faster. De'Ami will tell you that. Yeah. And De'Ami is the only 2-time 1,000-yard receiver in Carolina history. And he was back for the Virginia game, and Joffrey had a 75-yard touchdown catch, mostly run with his very impressive legs. And De'Ami was on the sideline. He's going crazy. So a month later, he's gone. I think that sometimes it's just not working. Yeah. And I thought it was going to work for him. But, we learned some things during the preseason that maybe Joffrey was, still having some issues running routes. People see the drops, but, if you're not the first option on a route, you still got to bust your toe on that route. Because if the first option is not there, then you become when a quarterback goes to his progression, when he goes from option 1 to option 2 to option 3, each time he goes down through his progression, you're the first option once he looks at you. You're the option.
Oh, yeah.
Get open. So, and I'm not saying that that was a huge problem, but I'm just saying that a lot of young guys have to learn that. It may have been something that he was learning. He's unbelievably talented.
Oh yeah.
And I really love watching Diame. Diame had that problem a little bit when he was young. He had the problem with the drops and he worked through it. I think a lot of people thought Joffrey was going to stay the process and work through it. But maybe sometimes you just wonder, different scenery, different experience, hit a reset button yourself. Mm-hmm. And so in hindsight, no, not that surprised. He played 125 snaps through the first 6 games, but only 42 in the last 3 that he played. He did not play against Miami. 1 catch. He had 15 catches for, I think, 337 yards last year. Was a big play guy.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be the top of the defense guy.
I did too.
I really did. And, that's one of about 600 things I missed on with this team this year. And one catch. PFF has him for 2 drops. I thought it was 3.
I think it is 3.
Look, for him, this is a great thing that the portal is in place, that he could go somewhere and be on the field next year, hit a reset button for himself, and hopefully he has a ton of success because he's a tremendous talent. And I don't ever want to see talent wasted in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. And I think for Carolina, if they needed to free up some space in that room, they did free up some space in that room. But you want to see some more guys run routes. 4 wide receivers ran routes Saturday. Mm-hmm. The other guys aren't getting open. Sam Howell's completed 129 passes this year, Jacob. 60 are to Josh Downs. 60.
It's wild.
He targeted Downs 14 times Saturday, and he threw 25 passes.
Go-to guy, no doubt about it. Yeah.
I mean, when I said that, I'm not sure they're better than they were in Blacksburg. The target overload wasn't at that percentage, that ratio in Blacksburg. It's like they're crawling through a narrower space on offense now than they were then. It's Josh, sometimes THI, and Sam running. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what they've been reduced to. Even the tight ends only got targeted a couple of times the other day. So maybe Joffrey leaving, maybe it shakes things up a little bit. Maybe it's a release for some guys. I have no idea. The dynamics of a locker room, which you and I have talked about before. In fact, we did in our video on the field Saturday night. The dynamics of a locker room is an amazing thing. And sometimes a little move. And this isn't to say that a guy who leaves is a bad guy. Yeah. It's just sometimes it gets players' attention. And sometimes that's what they need. Mm-hmm. So I hope Joffrey does well wherever he goes. And somebody should, maybe Steven Gosling will get some reps. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe J.J. Jones. You and I love what we saw from him back in the spring. Of course, it was just a spring, but Gavin Blackwell, Sam knows Blackwell. He's known him before. They're neighbors.
There's talent in that room, man. I mean, I got to see a lot of those guys, especially Gavin Blackwell and a couple other guys in that room before they even got to Carolina, and just talented guys. I've personally been a little bit surprised that more wide receivers haven't played. I know we've seen Gosnell play a little bit. We saw Olsen start against Miami, like I mentioned, kind of was quiet in that game. Real quickly, are you surprised that we haven't seen more kind of rotation in that wide receiver room?
Yeah, because, last year, Josh Downs didn't play a whole lot, and he talked about in the offseason some of the frustration he went through not getting on the field, but he also said, hey, I'm playing behind Daz Newsome. Hey, there's De'Ami Brown out there. Until Bo got hurt, there's Bo Corrales on the field. Mm-hmm. So it was understandable guys weren't getting out there. You're not going to pull one of them off to put somebody else on. But only one guy's getting open right now. So the fact that Simmons and Green are just not getting open a lot, maybe they're playing too many snaps. Maybe just get somebody else out there, see if somebody else can get open. That would make sense. But perhaps the other guys just aren't ready, and they're sort of stuck in a situation. Well, as Gene Hackman said in Hoosiers, my team is on the floor. Yeah. Well, maybe that's those are the wide receivers. That's who they are right now. And if that's the case, they're it's almost like they're just trying to get by each week with limited resources.
Yeah, I've been surprised that they haven't.
But those guys are talented. You're right.
Oh yeah.
At some point, Gavin Blackwell is going to race down the sideline with the ball in his hand.
No doubt.
So will J.J. Jones. But they would really like it to be 2021.
Yeah,
because it's a burning need right now, Jacob.
Oh, 100%. It may be moving forward. We'll see some shakeups, not only in the wide receiver room, but in other position groups. And that's kind of a segue into the last thing I want to talk about. Let's look ahead real quickly. Bye week this week, then it's South Bend for the Notre Dame game, big game for the Tar Heels. And then it doesn't get any easier after that with some of the games, some of the opponents they'll be playing, Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, NC State. tough ACC games coming up for the Tar Heels in the second half of the season as well. So, AJ, just looking ahead real quick. Yeah, I don't know. What are your kind of expectations for, moving forward, heading into that Notre Dame game and ahead of that?
They have 5 games left. One is against an FCS team. The 4 FBS teams or Power Fives, they're all ranked.
All ranked right now. You have big time, tough schedule, man.
They play 3 ranked teams in a 12-day span, beginning with the game at Notre Dame. And if Wake wins the next 2 weeks, I mean, Wake's 15 now.
I know.
Wake could be really close to the top 10. So they could have a 3-game stretch, and Notre Dame would be in it if they beat Southern Cal. They could have a 3-game stretch where they play at a top 10 Notre Dame, home against almost a top 10 unbeaten Wake team, and at a ranked Pitt team that might be the best club in this conference. They got Clemson at home coming up, so we'll learn about if Kenny Pickett is a guy to think about as an emerging dark horse for some awards. Let's see what he does against Clemson's defense.
I've seen people talking on ESPN like, should he be a Heisman candidate? I don't, that's probably never.
Let's wait and find out this weekend.
That speaks to his talent.
Let's find out this weekend.
Yeah, definitely.
I can't wait for that game. Clemson's offense is miserable.
Yeah.
They haven't scored more than 19 points, I think, or 19 points in regulation against a Power 5 team.
Yeah, it's crazy.
An FBS team.
It's crazy.
But their defense is incredible.
I think it's the best defense in the ACC and the worst offense. Literally, it was a couple weeks ago. I need to check up on that, but it literally was top defense.
They're pretty bad.
Offense, yeah.
They're pretty bad at offense. These statistics don't lie. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that game because if Pitt can win, I think if Pitt wins, they're the clear favorite in the Coastal.
Agreed. Yeah.
And Pickett would be the favorite to win ACC Player of the Year and maybe get some national attention, especially if he has a big game. So to answer your question, Carolina's got to play those 3 in a 12-day span with 2 of them on the road. Mm-hmm. And then they close at NC State. We talked back in August that NC State could be good, maybe really good. What the Wolfpack did in Chestnut Hill, awfully impressive. Oh, yeah. They physically thumped a physical team in their building. Mm-hmm. And there's a chance that the Wolfpack could be playing for something very meaningful the day after Thanksgiving. So Carolina's got 4 really tough games left. They do have the personnel, if clicking in the right way, to win one or any of those games, to be perfectly honest with you. Sometimes the bye week, hit that giant reset button, exhale, limited time on football, spend some time away, go clear your head, go say hi to mom and dad, go eat mom's cookie, go hang out with some friends from school next weekend, this coming weekend, just be a dude for a while. Sometimes that's all you need. Get refocused. They're going to have no pressure on them. Maybe for the first time this year, this team will have no pressure on it when it takes the field at South Bend. Because nobody's going to expect them to win. And much of the fan base, based on what I've read and heard from people reaching out, they're going to expect them to get their clocks cleaned.
Yeah, I've heard the exact.
So they had pressure in Blacksburg. They had pressure the next week. They've had pressure the first 7 weeks.
No doubt.
Significant pressure. And they've been dealing with adversity. But now, you know what? 4-3, Notre Dame, NBC, primetime, and Notre Dame's got a lot to play for. Carolina's got nothing to lose. Go up there and let her rip, man. And it wouldn't surprise me if they play well. Mac Brown knows what he's doing, folks. There's some people actually jumping on Mac. He knows what the hell he's doing. And I would not be surprised if this club is better over the last 5 games, although it may not reflect itself in the win-loss column because they're playing significantly better competition. The 4 teams they have left, aside from Wofford, each of them are so much better than anybody they played.
Yeah.
So they have to win one of those games to get to a bowl. Right now, it appears like a long shot, but it could happen because I think this team has enough potential to strike enough to get on the scoreboard enough to win. And the defense has had really good stretches. They just, for some inexplicable reason, just go off the rails. And man, when they go off the rails, they hang out off the rails for a while.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
They got to fix that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, I've been saying it, not on here, but off camera all year, that I have more confidence in this Carolina team playing against better teams than I do when they play against lower teams. I don't know if it's a playing down to their competition thing, but Carolina has talent. And I know, and we've all played sports. Sometimes when you are a talented bunch, maybe you're just not winning games like you should be. when you play those bigger teams where you're like, all right, maybe our record doesn't reflect like theirs does, but I know that par for par, we have just as much talent as they do. Sometimes that makes you step up, play a little bit more confident. Doesn't mean you're going to win the game, but that's kind of in a lot of ways how I look at this Carolina team. But until we see them play a really good team.
But they haven't played a good team. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just speculative.
I would say the best example to prove that theory right would have been how they went to Blacksburg. Because I do think Virginia Tech's the best team they played, and they were horrible. They were horrible out of the gate defensively. This first 32 plays, and they only moderately got it going offensively and didn't play well. So I think right now confidence is an issue, and sometimes just taking a step away helps confidence, because confidence sometimes are negative thoughts piling on top of negative thoughts, and it weighs you down. And when it weighs you down, weighs you down mentally. It makes you physically slower. And you don't see things well. You have communication problems in the back. Guys drop passes over the middle. Guys do false start. I mean, the penalties have picked up significantly the last 2 weeks. I think the psychological piling on effect, which I think this week is go back to the middle thing we talked about. A lot of it's going to be about just exhaling a few times.
Yeah, it's huge. Like you said,
get some of that stuff off, and maybe you play a little looser, and suddenly the penalties aren't there. You're not false starting like crazy. Some of the penalties they've had in the last couple of weeks, we hadn't seen since the previous regime.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
And that's not to criticize the previous regime. It's just the reality.
Yeah, it's no criticism at all. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what this team looks like in South Bend and even after that. But I do agree that sometimes that bye week, when you're in the kind of a run of a season with all the pressure that Carolina's had in all these games with expectations, everything can be kind of something that can kind of spear you on and help you get some more wins down the line against some tougher opponents. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a very, very tough stretch of games to Carolina to end the season, but I think they've got talent on the roster where I think that they can go in these games, compete and potentially steal a couple wins. But based on what we've seen so far this year, I don't think as of right now I'll be predicting any wins in those games, but we'll see what happens down the line. But yeah, I think it's a good place to wrap this one up, AJ. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Appreciate you guys watching as always. Real quickly too, before we head out, like we plugged in the beginning, head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com, link in the description below. Sign up for a premium membership, just $8.33 a month. Great time to do it. The thick of football season and basketball season just around the corner. So if you want to stay a little bit more in the loop on what's going on, get access to our message boards and join our great community over there, head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Like I said earlier, link in the description below. But you guys know the drill. Like, share, hit that notification bell, and subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.